Look at this! I made a thing! This is my first game-ready 3D printed miniature that I modeled myself in Blender, which is a free 3D modeling software, for those of you who didn't know, and printed on my Elegoo Mars 2 resin printer. It took a lot of time to get used to using Blender properly, but after watching quite a few YouTube videos and lots of practice, I think I'm starting to get somewhere, and I'm finally feeling confident in my abilities to make these guys. So let's take a look at what I did and how it went. For my first set of homemade miniatures, I wanted something that would fit widely into the world of Diluvian Chronicles, something I could put in anywhere, and use as test models for my upcoming game Spire Seas. So I chose to get started on a crew of scavengers. These guys are the bandits, the scallywags, the guys that you come across just about anywhere in the world, on the seas, and things that I can pop into many different situations. This one I refer to fondly as Jimmy the Scav. I drew 3 different armor levels, light, medium, and heavy armor, as well as a few different head options that I could play around with in the future. Eventually, I need enough minis to represent a whole crew or 2, but for now, I just need to work on one basic dude. We'll start with a base mesh that I can also use for future characters. This was really the most time-consuming part of this whole endeavor because I had almost 0 experience. I had to start this process over a few times before I found some method that I liked. And once I had the basic shapes in place, I turned to sculpting in Blender to refine them. And going back and forth between moving parts around and smoothing them out. It was easy to get caught up in the details and spend hours on just one area, so I found it helpful to really move around and try to work on different parts of the mesh at the same time. Eventually, I was more or less satisfied with the base mesh. He's a little scrawny, but I think he's supposed to be. So it was time to start working on more of the details. I smashed everything together with booleans and smoothed it out. Finally, I could start working on clothes and such, like the vest. Started with a basic cube, subdivided it, and then started moving parts around until it loosely followed the shape of the chest, adding loops and tweaking things as I went. This probably wasn't the best way to go about it, but I also wanted to get a cleaner mesh to work with because the built-in remesher was giving me gross hands. Now, with a shape that I liked, I added some edge loops and subdivided again just to check, then moved on to the pants, the boots, and the hands, fixing those gross, squiggly, voxelated hands. So, feeling as if I hadn't punished myself enough yet, I moved on to the head. Heads are difficult, and I was really nervous about trying it out. But I decided to give it a shot, and turns out I really enjoyed it. I got to practice some different techniques, and even though it looked like an alien half the time, it never really felt overwhelming. Unlike the hands. I realize now that I probably should have done more of this sculpting on the rest of the body. Now that I'm a little more familiar with remeshing, it wouldn't have caused as much of a problem as I thought. But that doesn't matter, that's how we learn. So with the head done, it was time to add some details to the clothes. I refined the vest, which is looking pretty sharp, and added details to the boots, and then worked on the pants. And that's when I discovered the cloth brush, and oh my god, that was a good day. It was at this moment that my confidence spiked, and I felt like, wow, I could really actually make something that looked kind of cool. That confidence boost carried me through the rest of this project. I thought about adding some of the head pieces and little details that I had drawn in my original concept, but figured that for now just the basic shape would be enough, and I could add those later to add variety. But I definitely needed a weapon. So I decided to start with my favorite, the halberd. So I used one of my drawings from Inktober last year as a basic reference, and then added some details as I went along in the 3D model. I like to imagine that the scavengers use the hook on the end as a kind of multi-purpose tool for grabbing salvage from beneath the waves and helping to climb higher up onto the spires themselves. I specifically made this one a bit more futuristic and clean in case I decided to use it as a relic weapon in the game. And that was that. I gave the model a quick pose after learning how to rig the model and got him ready for printing. Printing went smoother than I expected, although there are a few little divots here and there from a bad auto pre-support situation, and he may or may not have lost a few digits because, you know, hands. But that's okay. He's a scavenger. He's a grunt. Whatever. To be entirely honest, I was hoping to have finished at least a whole crew of these guys, each with different weapons and different levels of armor by the end of the year, but practicing Blender took a lot of time, a little more than I expected, and so I'm happy at least to have ended up with one game-ready piece. Once I have a few more of those ready to go, I'm really excited to try out painting. I've never painted a miniature person before, and I recently got everything that I needed to try. So keep an eye out for that video here on the channel in the future, as well as videos about more terrain and everything else that I need to get a full game actually started. And if you want to see more, then head over to my Instagram page at Diluvian Chronicles. That's it for now. See you in the next one. Say goodbye, Jimmy. Wave your